Hello and welcome to Fantasy Fives, a podcast where I chat to an esteemed guest all about their dream five-a-side team. This week we're joined by Scottish journalist legend Hugh Macdonald. Hugh has been there, done that. He's sitting opposite me. Let's just chat to him. Hugh, how many games do you think you've been to in your time?
Well, God.
If you had to ballpark it, what would you go?
I don't know, but I've watched football in 8 different decades. 8 different decades. So there you go.
What a stat that is.
So I've watched football since the 1950s. I was 4 when I went to my first football game. My grandfather, and that was 1959. So I've watched games 59, 60, 70, 80, and still hurtling towards 70, which I'll be in a couple of months. I still go to at least one game a week.
See, if you're talking about you've done it in 8 decades, what do you think the peak of football was in that time?
Well, it depends who you
From your eyes.
From my eyes, probably late 60s, early 70s, being a Celtic supporter.
Okay.
And football, that was like the beginning in the Celtic era, and then it was that sort of segued into the Dutch total football. And as a supporter, these were the days, and people won't, think this is right, but these are the days as a Celtic supporter, you would go into the European Cup thinking that you could win it, So, and people say, that's mad. And you say, well, no, because they won it in 70, they were in the final. Sorry, they won it in 67, we were in the final in 70. They were in 2 other semi-finals where they were really unlucky. Lost a penalty shootout to Inter Milan, and another final where they were kicked off the park by Atletico Madrid. Another semi-final kicked off by
okay.
And a quarter-final, probably the best year, was when they were beaten 1-0 at Celtic Park by an AC Milan team who went on to scoosh the tournament. They beat Ajax 4-1 in the final, and we were the better team. So that was the kind of era.
And what's the worst point? When do you think football's getting worse as we go on?
No, I think this, it's very traditional for an old Egypt, like a football granda like myself,
okay.
to slaughter football nowadays. It's lost its soul and all that. I think football's terrific now. I mean, the thing about it is football never had any soul in the sense of, looking after fans or looking out for fans. I mean, fans of my era were standing in cesspits, dangerous.
With people pissing all in front of you, was that always a thing? I've always heard people talk about it.
Absolutely. I mean, you stood in your carry-out and then just urinated on top of it. It was like, and then it was the danger of it as well. I always remember the 1970 European Cup, and this is just an incident. There's plenty of these. 1970 European Cup final semi-final at Hampden. Leeds United v Celtic. I think the official attendance was 136,000. There was much, much more than that. I was quite tall at the time. I was 15, but I was tall. I'd be touching 6 foot. And I spent the whole game on my feet, not touching the ground.
What, just floating?
Just swaying with the movement.
You wouldn't even get close to that now.
No, I mean, so when people say to me, these modern stadiums are soulless and all that, I don't quite agree with that either, because some of them are architecturally beautiful. I mean, it's not politically correct to say, but I went to Qatar and some of the stadiums there were of architectural wonder. Yeah. There's one that I'll buy it that was built in the shape of a tent. And then you go into stadiums now. German football is famous for it as well. You go in and you can have a drink.
You're a big German aficionado.
Yeah, I love German football. I think German football is probably the medium between still having fans at the forefront and being slaves to mammon as well. They're in a sort of not a bad wee niche. It's overpraised for being this thing that is football.
Fan first. That's always the kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's not. I mean, because the clubs now are bound to financial reality. You've got the most moral club, like St. Pauli, that always stood up. They're getting in a real stoosh for their overseas supporters because St. Pauli fans and probably the great diaspora of St. Pauli fans would be, how's the best way to say it, would be sympathetic to Palestine. And obviously St. Pauli can't be seen to do that because of the great German guilt and over anti-Semitism. So they've had to sort of tack their sails to the wind. Borussia Dortmund, my club, which is one of these.
How often you going out to Dortmund? You still doing like 2-3 times a year?
Aye, not so much now. Maybe once or twice a year. My son, inconveniently for me, because he was the one that used to go out with me, we decided to get married and have children.
Oh, it's a career ender, isn't it?
So that's put a kind of a. We managed to get out at least once a year now. Sometimes I'll go myself as well. But we're great people we went to Argentina for games as well. I mean, that's what we do. We go to football games.
Just around the world?
Around the world.
So Argentina, do you go to River, Boca? What were you at?
We went River, Boca. I went, it was generally Boca for me. He went to a couple other games. I went to Boca, Palmeiras, semi-final, Copa Libertadores, River, Boca. There's tons of teams, 14 top teams in Buenos Aires, so you've not got far to go for a derby. So
14 top teams in one city?
One city. It's the greatest football city in the world, bar none. So they have a derby Saturday, and it was Boca v Lanús.
Is there a derby every Saturday? Surely, yeah.
So it was Boca v Lanús we went to, which is where Diego was born, and then the next day it was San Lorenzo v Huracán, which is a sort of Porto Clásico. So we went to that, and San Lorenzo's the real official Pope's 11.
Is that?
It's. Is
that their branding? Like, is that what
they were called? They've got almost like a kind of same birth story as Celtic, and they're called Corvos, which is crow, and that was they were started by a priest, so crow looking like the black and the So, but the Pope supports them. So when San Lorenzo won the Copa Libertadores, their only Copa Libertadores so far. They came off the park, onto a bus, airport, fly to Rome, off the plane at Rome, onto a bus, straight up to the Vatican, show the Pope the Copa Libertadores.
Imagine not even getting to celebrate, just straight to see the Pope.
That's the huge thing. And the old cliche about football being a religion in Argentina. That's the greatest trip of my life, and I've been lucky. I mean, I've been paid to go all over the world and watch football.
How long have you been a football journalist?
Not that long. That's another story altogether. I mean, I started as a football journalist in 2005.
Really?
Yeah. Because what I did before that was I was what they call a sub-editor. And when I started in newspapers, the quickest way to get to the top was through production, to be a sub-editor.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I rose really, really quickly. I had the sort of trajectory of a malfunctioning rocket. And I shot to the top of journalism and became chief sub-editor of the Herald at the age of 25, I think. And about 7 years later, I was sitting in the corner, cowering and ready to get papped out the door. So that was, so then I sort of had this.
It's like a footballer's career.
Yeah, I had this second career of then going into other aspects of journalists, and eventually washed up in the scope. I did a sports column from the 90s. Always did a sports column, but that was a bit side hustle. And then it came to me in 2005, I think, that they said to me, do you want to be chief sports writer? And I went, aye, okay. Because it suited me then.
Yeah.
Actually, my marriage had just ended, so I could travel without it. And my kids were up. And it was quite a travelling job in those days because Andy Murray was coming through as well. So newspapers had a bit of money then. So you were following Andy Murray literally all over the world.
What was that like?
It was tremendous. I mean, like following a Scottish sportsman who, was competing in the greatest era of tennis at the very top, and then being, bona fide Scot and really unusual. So to have somebody that was another one of the highlights in life. Being at people can be snotty about sport, and they can say, best days of your life. Andy Murray winning Wimbledon was not just one of them.
The first time.
Isn't that great? The first time.
Yeah, just that.
Mad. Andy Murray winning Wimbledon was one of the greatest days of my life.
Where were you? Were you at?
I was in the centre court. And then after it, we went down and we're chatting to him. And I had this lanyard on with my ugly mug on it saying Centre Court 2013. And he just took it and he signed it. And I don't collect things, so I threw it in my cutlery drawer.
Hugh.
No, wait, I
Right.
threw it in my cutlery drawer, and my son came over one day to make his toast and talk away to me, and he opens it, he says, "What's that?" And I told him what it was, and he says, "Right, I'm off with that." So he's got it in his man cave. My son's got all, like we got pictures of all our trips together. He
All the
forms,
memorabilia.
he forms little books as well. You can, I don't know,
Yeah.
young people nowadays, but you can get little albums off
Yeah.
this. So I've got them all over the house, like, Dortmund this.
So you're not sentimental in any way about stuff?
No, I'm quite sentimental about pictures. Every night I will, before I go to my bed, I'll look at the pictures of trips and the grandwains and things like that. I'm quite sentimental about that. I always think it's that gives me a really kind of warm feeling. It always ends the wet. I mean, I'm a great man because I've had such a blessed life that I'm a great man for gratitude.
Yeah. If you were a footballer, would you swap jerseys then? At the end of each game, would you have swapped it? Or would you just not have been asked about it?
I don't know if I would have actually. I don't think I would have been a great swapper of jerseys. But having said that, I was at a footballer's house the other day, their top footballer, and I saw the jerseys that he had, and I went, "Oh my goodness," Oh yeah, I really liked him. But I'm not a memorabilia guy.
Do you know the Lee Mayer story?
No.
So Lee Mayer played for Aberdeen against Bayern Munich, and this young player offered to swap shirts with him, and Lee gave him his and didn't take the other players, and it was Tony Kroos in his European debut, and that shirt would have been worth thousands and thousands of pounds now. But he just left it.
Well, there's a great, the great Maradona story, which that strip I got pictured in Qatar. It's in Qatar at the moment, the Qatar Museum, the famous how many millions the English guy got for it. But Ruffy's got a great story about he played against Maradona in that famous game in '79. He played one half against him, famously never letting a goal. Well, never letting a goal to Maradona.
Yeah. He always gets on and on.
It's George Wood that ended the goal. Yeah. And anyway, he always wanted to watch it again. And it was old days of VHS. And Ian Monroe, who played that day left back, he lent Ruffy the tape of it. And he says, "Watch this. It's a sacred VHS. It's me. It's got me on it with Maradona and all that." And of course, Ruffy had young kids at the time, and just before he was coming back to hand it back to Ian Monroe, he realised the tape Tom and Jerry over all of
their dad and his friends playing against Maradona. Oh, well, let's get into your Fantasy Fives team. Right. Before we do that, I want to chat because now you're doing on the road.
Yeah.
So you do. This is why I thought you've been doing. If it's sports journalism for such a long time, because now you've kind of gone away from the glamorous ties so much, and you'll go to on the road with a team or do something. So I know you've done Jags for Good, Thistle Charity Amateur Team, your Glasgow City Women's and stuff like that. How do you find that, just going to junior grounds, professional grounds? What's that like?
Well, it's a funny thing because when I was growing up in the Herald and all that at that time, there was a snootiness about football, and there was like it was a middle class paper in Glasgow very much at that time, and it was if you were a football fan, you tend to keep it quite. It wasn't discussed in conference and all that. Now I always had this strong feeling. Maybe I have a hinterland. I ended up as literary editor of the Herald. I love music. I love travel. But as the older I get, I see how important football is to me. Culturally, in my soul, in my family, it's probably the most important thing to me outside family. I mean, it's just because it's such a glue, it's such an opening, it's an aperture to wonderful experiences. Like I would never go to Argentina if I wasn't going to go to a football game, that kind of stuff. So, and I'm not, as I said earlier, I don't slag corporate big football, because corporate big football can be sensational, and I go to it and I pay over the odds for it. I went to Dortmund were in the Champions League final, so
was that Wembley?
At Wembley, so I had to go to that.
What did you pay for your ticket? What was
it? Not even on the actual bona fide face value price was £430.
Jeez, you man.
So but the thing about it is, the way I say to myself is, I don't drink and I don't smoke and I don't gamble, purely because I did all three to excess, which explains the earlier part of the career crashing after the top.
Yeah.
So it really is my passion, and I say, well, that's it for me, And guys go and play golf dues and all that. I say, man, I work, and I'm nearly 70 and I still work, so I'll buy what I want. So I'll go to a game for that. Anyway, so I'm not sniffy about top class
And
football.
the On the Road series, you must love it.
What I love about that is it's distilled football. It's football about what makes football important in Scotland, and that stat about more people per head go to blah de blah de blah.
You always see this more per capita. Every person in Scotland is the highest attended.
Yeah. And you go along to these things and you see how important it is to people, if you go to like Kilburnie Lade Side, you go into the room and you say, what are all these messages lying there? Oh, I can't say, we just collect messages every week, we take them around the town to people, and you go to Stenhouse Beer and the guy, what's all these books? Oh, we run a library now for people that can't get to the libraries, and we take books to them, and it's just stories, clubs, and then the people in it, I mean, I went to Pollock once, and the first person I was talking to was Ken Nicholson's a pal of mine, whose son is Michael Nicholson, the chief exec at Celtic. So I talked to him, and just at that moment, Campbell Ogilvie walked past, who was the ex-president of the SFA. So I talked to him, and I said, well, that's me got my story already. I'm not the first two people I talked to. He said, no, talk to that wee woman in the corner. And there's this 81-year-old woman selling raffle tickets. And I said, why? She says...
You eyeing her up?
That'd be cradle snatching for me. So I went over to her, and she was Bobby Gillespie's mum of Primal Scream.
Amazing.
So you're talking to the woman that's the mother of Bobby Gillespie, and she's telling you how Bobby used to go to gigs. And it's that kind of thing all the time. It's like the more people you talk to, obviously, the more stories you get. I mean, there was another when I was at a Glasgow Saturday morning cup final, which being Scotland was played on a Friday night, and it was out at Ben Bird's game. And
great ground. Yeah.
So I was out there. There's this wee boy flying up, and stout wee boy, but flying up and down the wing. Absolutely fantastic wee player. But you can see how he's not going to the top. He's a bit heavy. And then he gets hooked after 60 minutes, and it's a kind of game that you can actually talk to the players once they go on. I said, listen, wee man, that was astounding. I said, you were just best player in the park. Well done. Oh, thanks very much. I said, why did you come off? He says, I've just burst. I says, you were doing a lot of running. He says, no, I'm burst emotionally. I says, why is that? He said, I just come from my dad's funeral.
Oof.
Now, and I said, all right. So I got to talk to him. And the obvious question is, why are you playing football after your dad's funeral? And the obvious answer was his. He says, well, where else would I be? Sitting in my flat now?
Yeah.
I can. He says, I'm here with my mates.
And did his team win?
They won?
Yeah, that's okay. Maybe
They
that
won.
story's going to get brutal at the end.
And he said, that kind of significance of football, I don't think can be underrated.
The more I work in football, the more it astounds me. I remember during lockdown trying to do a comedy show on the pitch of Firhill, because you could remember it was like 4 meters each way, and just going in, and like you said, the Thistle Trust had taken over the whole ground with shopping for the elderly, people who were shielding. That sense of community is so good, and I think that's something that at the lower end of the table, definitely from Championship downwards, it's more prevalent. I think when the more upper the echelons you go, I think it's maybe less there. But anyway, let's get into your team. How hard was it to come up with your Fantasy Five-a-side team?
Not too hard once I set the rules for it.
Okay, so what were the rules you said? Because my rules are you have to have one player from the team you support, and the manager needs to be someone in your phone book. What rules have you added for yourself?
My rule is that it's got to be a bona fide five-a-side team. So it's got to contain certain characters in it. It can't just be 5 elite footballers.
Let's get started then. Have you got a goalie?
We've got a goalkeeper.
Who's your goalie? Who you go for?
My goalkeeper is Albert Camus.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
Albert Camus is a philosopher who wrote...
I expected you were going full football here. You've got me already.
No, he was a philosopher who wrote novels, very existential novels like The Plague and things like that. And the reason I'm doing this, as I go through the team, it will become clear. I think there's only 2 things important about five-a-side football. That's to win.
Yep.
You don't go to the fives not to win. And 2, you've got to go on with the guys to get back to the pub with them.
Okay.
And I say this as a teetotaler of 30 years, right? So that's the 2 things. They've got to be good football players, and they've got to be good in the pub.
So for me, I don't bother. If I'm playing fives, it's not a league or whatever, I don't mind about winning or losing. No. Is that bad?
That's bad for me.
Is it okay? So I'm not making your five, am I?
No,
So
no.
Albert Camus, what qualities do you think he would bring?
Well, Albert Camus, one of his, or Camus, or whatever he went to, one of his great quotes in philosophy was something along the line. He was Algerian French, so you've got to say, was everything I know about life I learned from football.
Great. Okay.
So that's one of his famous quotes. So I'd like to, and he was a goalkeeper, you see.
Right. So he actually has a goalie. Okay.
He actually played football in goal
Okay.
at a fairly decent level before he became one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. He decided to play in goals. So, so he would get there on his place as a goalie, but also as a guy that seen the pub when everybody's getting drunk and I'm still sober. I can go over to Albert and say, Albert, before you get another, anisette down your throat, can you tell me the secret of life?
And you just chat.
And he'll just chat. So he's stonewall certainty for number one.
I like that. And then formation-wise, what are you going for outfield? Have you thought
I'm going for one defender, two in midfield, one up front.
Great, let's get into your defender. Who are you going
Defender is Billy Connolly.
Okay.
And Billy...
Have you ever met him before we got into this?
Yeah.
Right, let's go.
And
Okay.
And Billy, for a couple of reasons. One, because he's an teetotaler, but he would absolutely tick the box for going back to the pub with him.
Yes. Easily.
Easily. Just say that. In fact, probably in the whole world, he's a guy you want to go back to, but that's another.
So where did you meet him?
Met him at football. Met him down the years with a great friend of mine, Russell Kyle. You ever see Billy Connolly at a football match? There's a small guy standing beside him. That's Russell Kyle.
Okay.
Who's one of the great journalists of his generation.
Was he like a fixer for him? Or?
He's just his pal. They just became pal. Russell was a kind of showbiz writer at the time of Connolly was treading the boards up here. So Russell will know, like Rod Stewart's one of Russell's great pals. Alex Harvey, the late and great Alex Harvey would be one of his pals, etc. So Russell would have that. So anytime Billy's in Glasgow, Russell's his man, So, Russell actually engineered an interview with Billy a couple of years ago, which was purely about football. I didn't want to talk to him
so
about...
you sat and interviewed Billy Connolly a couple of years ago all about football?
Just about football.
How did I miss this, Hugh?
And it was sensational stuff, all his, what it meant to him, funny stories. He was at Celtic Park one day and the police rang to say his car had been broken into, and he said, he was cheesed off as we all had, and stuff had been stolen, and he turned around to Russell and he said, there wasn't that much in the car, but do you ever remember he had a big pyjama suit that was like a big stripe?
Yeah.
He says, they've nicked that. He says, I would love to have got that back because that's really sentimental and all that. And the police phoned him as he was walking home or looking for a taxi. He said, we found your gear, found the stuff that's been stolen. He says, and how do you know it's mine? He says, well, there's a limited amount of people that are wearing striped pyjama suits. So we think
in the Parkhead area.
So we might think it was you. And
he'd be a good talker at the back as well. Organise.
He'd be a good eye, and he would keep it going for you.
How do you think Albert Camus and Billy Connolly are going to get on?
They're going to go on great because they're both really intelligent, and I think all comedians are philosophers, and all philosophers sometimes are comedians.
I know a lot of comedians. I would say a lot of comedians are idiots. Like I would
still be an idiot and be a philosopher.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean
that's
doesn't
a quote.
Being an idiot doesn't make you a bad person.
No, that's true. That is true.
The world would be a better place if we were all idiots. A big problem in the world I always find is it's run by idiots who think they're smart, and that's the danger.
Yes.
See, if you're like me, you're a bumbling idiot that's not doing any harm. I think that's all right.
That's true.
That's all right. You just stumble through life. You don't try not to harm people.
As a bumbling idiot, who have you gone from midfield? Who's your first midfielder?
Midfielder is Kenny Dalglish.
Yes. So this is your Celtic pick.
This is my Celtic pick.
Okay.
And Kenny Dalglish, simply on football terms, simply because you could do anything. You could play. I watched them at Celtic and obviously watched them at Liverpool and Scotland, and you could play Kenny Dalglish at right back and he'd be the best right back in the team.
I'd imagine a lot of the listeners who are listening might not have seen him play in the flesh. How good was he?
I think he's the best Scottish footballer ever, and I'd just put him just ahead of Dennis Law on that. But for me, he was most complete. You could do anything. He's probably spent his career at Liverpool. He was voted the best Liverpool player ever, which is a fair accolade.
Good, yeah.
And he spent his probably playing out of position because he was more a midfielder at Celtic than.
Was he?
Yeah, well, he started off. He played in some bad Celtic teams, and he started off just being the primary 7 boy that was playing the primary 2s, and they just give him the ball. He would run about 50 yards back. The goalie would run it out to him. He'd do a series of 1-2s and dummies and thrash it in at the net. He was spectacularly good, but he's not just in the team for his unalloyed brilliance and irrefutable brilliance, in it because every five-a-side team needs a moaner.
True.
So this is the other tick box. Kenny, just like an incredible moaner.
Really?
Aye, on the football pitch, just like all the players that played with him just said, he's just like, it's that demanding thing.
What do you think his standards were higher?
Oh God, aye.
Right.
I mean, Ian Rush. I once did a piece on the 100 greatest Scottish footballers for the Herald, and Dalglish was voted number 1. Coincidentally, I was the one that was running it. So I don't know if there's receipts anywhere. But anyway, I had to get a guy to talk about Kenny Dalglish. And again, it was Russell Kyle, who was by then in PR, said, I'll get you. Ian Rush was coming up here to do one of these press conference things for the Scotland-Wales game. He said, I'll get you 10 minutes with Ian Rush. And I talked to Ian Rush about Dalglish. And Rush was incredible at Dalglish. He said, you've got to remember in those days, dressing rooms were brutal. He said, and I was in the dressing room. The dressing room at Liverpool was run by 3 guys, Dalglish, Hansen and Souness. They ran it. They just ran it. Everything, didn't do anything. You didn't go on a golf out and you didn't do this. You didn't buy a new car. You didn't wear a pair of fancy shoes. You had to get it past them. They were just like that.
Like the mafia.
Well, it was like that brutal way that Roy Keane will tell you about that way. Alec Ferguson will tell you he stayed out the dressing room later in his career, just let the dressing room run the dressing room. And and Rush said, told me, so I didn't think I could handle it after 6 weeks. He says, so he went to Bob Paisley, who'd bought him for a sizable fee, and said, I don't know if I can handle these guys in the dressing room. And Paisley said to him, fine, I'll find you a club.
And that was it?
That was it. And Rush is going, what? He says, right. He says, well, I'm not going to get rid of Dalglish, Souness and Hansen because you're in the huff.
Yeah.
So Rush buckled down and he said that was Dalglish. Dalglish didn't just make him as a footballer because Dalglish's passes to him and link up with him were superb. But that hardness made him, he said, I could withstand anything, on the park. I saw what they were about. I saw this was like a sort of a rite of passage because the pressures in Liverpool, you just had to win every week, and you had to score with every chance and all that. So
I presume in that list, Law would have been number 2, Dalglish number 1. Who was number 3? Can you remember?
I think, Souness 3, I think.
Yeah.
Johnston 4, Dave Mackay 5.
Okay, Dave Mackay.
Mackay was an incredible player. So that would be roughly the 5, I think.
How close do you think John McGinn would get to in current levels?
In the top, I don't know.
50?
Top 50,
right,
yeah.
Okay. It's just interesting when you see the stats. Obviously, McGinn's now got 20 goals for Scotland. I think Dalglish and Dennis Law got 30 each, but Dalglish was over a long time in Rush.
Different eras as well.
Yeah. So you've got 2 Scots, a French Algerian in your team. Who's your second midfielder? What nationality we got?
It's Italian and it's Romeo Bonetti.
Okay, again, a name I do not know.
Right, Romeo Bonetti was a great Italian midfielder, played in the 70s for for Juventus, AC Milan and the Italian national team. And he gets into the team because he ticks about, you must have a homicidal maniac in the five-a-side team.
Yes.
Because every proper five-a-side team has a psychopath in it.
Yeah. So always someone called Hatchet or something like that. Yeah.
And I always think that if police actually, investigators just routinely scouted five-a-side matches, the detection rate of murders would be. And they're almost, sometimes they're the most unlikely characters. They're always like Farker from Accounts, who went to the High School of Glasgow and he's married with 2 children. He's a guy who can tell you the best way to go to Peebles, avoiding the bypass. and he's building a model rail set, and he's conversing in Heinland.
Yeah.
He comes on to play against you, and he tries to do you in the first minute. It's tibia fracture, and you go, what? I actually stopped playing fives in the Herald because of that, because all the nice guys were breaking people's ankles. It was just going crazy.
Just that inner rage coming out of the pitch.
Having come out. So Romeo Benetti would fill that role and some. If you ever want to go down a YouTube hole,
yes, always.
And Benetti versus Maradona, there's this thing about Messi's the greatest player ever. And you just say, well, he might be the greatest player now, he might be even the greatest player, but he can't be ever because he couldn't have played
in that era.
Couldn't have played.
So is Benetti just kicking lumps out of Maradona?
Benetti would kick lumps out of Stephen Hawking's. That's what and Stephen Hawkins is dead.
Yeah,
which makes it even slightly more troublesome.
Very true, very true.
And the greater thing about
who's the Scottish equivalent of a hatchet man?
They're not really
Bowman?
Yeah, but they're not. I mean, Souness was brutal. There was, and Souness had both sides. He was a wonderful football player, but he could leave the boot in. It's kind of dead art because now, apart from everything else, there's cameras that can spot you now, so you're not getting away with it. And anyway, the rules have changed. You can't tackle from behind. You can't go. There's you get a yellow card immediately and all that.
During lockdown, I watched the BBC Scotland did the replays of the Old Cup finals. I watched the '91 Cup final, the 4-3 game, Motherwell Dundee United, and I reckon I saw 7 red cards, maybe 8.
Yeah,
they were just flying into them.
Everybody flew in. The other thing that Benetti ticks the box is he's a nice guy. He was a nice guy.
Off the pitch, was he?
Nice, very rapid. But the beauty of him as well is in your team, he's called Romeo. So he's a homicidal maniac called Romeo. So if you need to wind him up, you just keep calling him Romeo in front of the opposition team. And then they'll try and take
chip in.
They'll try and take the proverbial urine, right? So that just send him over the top. So you're talking about the first reel of Saving Private Ryan. Right?
Yeah.
So he's in. So he's in.
And striker wise, who's your final 5?
The striker, the other one is you've got to have the other thing in the 5-a-side things, you've got to have a wee fat guy in the team that smokes.
Yes.
Has to smoke as well. And he has to be good at football. He has to have had trials for Luton or Barnsley. Or he was once in the Scottish schools under 15s, right? And he's this wee fat bockle. And the front four for me is Diego Armando Maradona.
So I was really hoping you picked him here because you mentioned him numerous times throughout it. For you, best ever?
Oh, for me, another thing of my obsessions, I've followed Maradona all around the world. Like I went to his house in Buenos Aires. I went to his shack where he was born, which is literally a shack. And then when Argentinos Juniors bought him, they bought a house for him. This was part of the inducements. He was only 15, but they bought a house for him. So it's now a museum. So we went to that. It was terrific. Then I went to Naples, and there's a Maradona murals in Naples because he famously won 2 Scudettos for Napoli, which was the only Scudettos they'd ever won till the one recently. Yep. So, and he's literally a god in Argentina. And I went to Seville, and I've been to Barcelona, all the places.
Just a pilgrimage every time.
Yeah.
Have you done an on the road with Napoli yet?
Yeah, and I did an on the road on Maradona, the 3 places I went to. I'll send.
We'll put this out. We'll put this out because this is amazing.
Because the great thing about Maradona in Argentinos Juniors is the great hero, the greatest player ever that ever played for him. And as you walk past Argentinos Juniors, you can do the tour. There's like an opening that would be like a room. You just bring up this kind of shutters, and there's this chapel in it, and it's the chapel of El Diego. There's seats, and there's an altar, and there's pictures of Maradona everywhere. Very iconic. I've got them, with halos, and as a saint. And people are all milling about all over the world, and people leave things. A guy actually left his credit card there. Just put his credit card there. And I had to phone him and say, listen, he says, no, I've just cancelled it, but that was the only thing I had on me, so I left my credit card.
What did you leave?
I just left some, a lot of the money is taken for the local charities, so
Okay.
I left a wad of pesos. By the way, the peso thing in Argentina is if you decide to go and change $100 to go out for a meal that night, it's like going into the garage at Breaking Bad. The amount it's just bricks and bricks of money you get for it.
I do like that.
It's like the Weimar Republic.
I remember being in Indonesia and
So,
getting
and,
1.7 million or
You need a
something.
fuel barrel to
Yeah.
to go and buy a program. But in this chapel, there's this wee Johnny standing in the corner, just watching everything goes all right. And I was talking to the guide, and I said, "That's a picture here. It was Maradona in a chapel with a baby." I said, "What's all this about?" And he says, "Well, Diego, when he's 15, 16, Godfather's a big thing, and particularly in Latin Catholicism, Godfather's a very big thing." And he said, Diego just became Godfather for this area. All the kids that were born in this area, they were always asked to be Diego to be Godfather. So that's terrific. I said, that's a great wee picture. And he says, well, see that guy in the picture, the baby in the picture, that's him there. That's Diego the Johnny. And Diego the Johnny comes out with the great line. You just talk to him. I said, how are you doing, Diego? And he goes, but he speaks Spanish. And I said to the guy, what did he say? He said, Diego looked after me in life. Now I look after him in death.
That's the last quote of the
I said,
article.
that's my article finished. I can now go. So
that's amazing. I was hoping you'd have Diego Maradona. How do you think he would fit in? What a night out that would be with Diego and Billy Connolly.
Diego and Billy Connolly. And Kenny likes a night out as well.
Does he?
Kenny's very funny as well. I mean, I wouldn't pretend to know Ken Dalglish very well, but any time I've met him, he's very, very dry. He's very funny.
Do you still get excited when you meet footballers?
Yeah.
Yeah, same. It's weird, isn't it?
It's particular ones from my youth. Like I interviewed Cruyff once, and a guy that maybe not a lot of people know. I was over in Qatar working, and I met a guy called Johan Nieskens, and I was there with another journalist. And the other journalist would be about your age, and he said, "Never seen you so excited in an interview." I says, "It's Johan Nieskens," and
he's part of the Dutch team.
Yeah, he was the second best player in the world when his mate was the best player in the world.
His mate being Cruyff.
So Nieskens was one of this really muscular, athletic, technically good Dutch players. Great guy, great interview as well, and that he talked so well about football. So yeah, I still get. You know, I mean, if you walk about and you see. I mean, there's another thing about on the road. You know, I went to Vale of Leven and I saw this guy. I said, I know this guy, and the guy was Evan Williams. Now, Evan Williams played in a European Cup final for Celtic in 1970 in goal.
Was he doing it? What was he doing at Vale of Leven?
He was watching his grandson playing goal for Vale of Leven. And the great stat about Evan was 5 years after winning the European Cup, he was manager of Vale of Leven and he was playing in midfield. He was a good player. And I said, I wrote to that was a kin of Andy Robertson now playing in goal. 5 years after he's won a Champions League, he's now playing in goal for Vale of Leven and nobody's batting an eyelid.
It's just a different world now, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And then manager-wise, the manager is to be someone from your phone book. Hugh Macdonald, I imagine you've got an extensive list of contacts in this phone book. Who do you think of one of your personal contacts? Easy. Who is it?
Sir Alec Ferguson.
Oh, that's an incredible one. How'd you get his number? I take it you've interviewed him?
I got this was another story, was that although I was late into journalism in 2005, around about 2006, 2007, I was given an opportunity to go down and interview Fergie about the Citizens Theatre because he was backing the refurbishment and the resurrection of it. And he was willing to talk to the Herald about it. And anyway, I was obviously, saying, I wonder what he's like. I didn't know him at all. And, I interviewed him, and the interview was extensive, generous, informative, went off at different angles, just terrific stuff.
Do you think that's because you're both working class football guys? Do you think?
Well, one of the things that I think, I think that's really part of it. But the other thing is, I think we're both guys who are interested in education. like not formally educated, but certainly my dad's generation and part of I was only one in my family that didn't go to university. I went straight into journalism. But there was a great pull on the generation above me that you had to be educated. Educate the working class. Dad was really strong in that. Alec Ferguson's dad, and Alec was really strong in it. So a lot of education was self-education. And Alec was not really known about him is that, and he would laugh at this, but he's an extensive reader in history, particularly American history. He's probably one of the, I share these interests, but he's probably in the American Civil War. I would say he was an expert in the American Civil War. I would say he was an expert.
Did you go onto that?
Because we just see the thing that made the interview easy was I forgot that Alec Ferguson would be sharper than me, and there's a vast.
He's about to win a European Cup like the year after.
He's a vast. He's got a vast constituency of people that are sharper than me, but he's certainly one of them. And I knew he would phone. He's a great man for doing research. So I knew he'd phone. Who's this Hugh Macdonald guy? It's a new.
So he sounded you out.
So I'm just presuming this, and the guys he would sound me out would definitely be Hugh McIlvanney and Glenn Gibbons, who were great friends of mine.
Legendary names as well.
So real pals of mine. So I was walking through an open door because they'd have said, "This is what he's in." Because he got into books first, and he was just American history and things like that. So in any contact down the years that I've had with him, he occasionally will phone to give comments on the passing of so many of his, of his peers and contemporaries. But usually it'll be about books. I mean, the last conversation I had with him was I'd read a lot about the American Civil War and things like that, but I wanted to refresh it, and I thought I wanted a nice sippy. I was going to Washington around my holidays, and I was going to do the American War of Independence, and I was wanting to brush up on Civil War. And I said, "Listen, I need a 1-volume history of the American Civil War to brush up." And he says, "Well, it's James McPherson's. Well, that'll be the one."
Do you text or do you phone?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do either. He would. I've got a great belief that if Alec Ferguson wants to talk to me, he'll talk to me.
Yeah, okay.
I don't see him sitting, mulling over his nice wine and a Friday night. And God, I could do a conversation with Hugh Macdonald. But if he phones or texts me,
it's open season.
And to bring the conversation right around, because I know we'll come towards the ending of it, and to go back to On the Road, I was in Benburb to do an on-road in Benburb, and up the wall in Benburb, I sees this photograph, and it's Alec Ferguson. And I know quite a lot about Alec Ferguson, but he never, by my lights, he never played for Benburb. So, but he's in a Benburb shirt and all that, and so I've talked to and I said, so I went outside and I chanced my luck. It's the first time, very unusual text. So I texted him, I said, I'm in Benburb, and there's a big centre forward, a gallus look on his face in the boardroom. And he texts me, "Is he good looking?" And I said, "Of course he is, of course." He says, "If you've got a minute, I've got a story about that." So immediately in Benburb, under the motorway, whistling past, and guys clacking out to play a second division West of Scotland football game or whatever it was, I'm ringing the greatest football manager in the world. And of course, if you ring him for a story, he has got a story about Benburb. And the story about it was how Benburb binned him, because he was playing for the Benburb under 16s or 17s. And they decided there was no money. So they arrived for training, and he told the 3 guys they arrived for training, "This will interest you.
No.
You're done. There's no team for you to go. You'll have to go elsewhere." So he was standing in Govan, and the 2 guys that were standing beside him were Ronnie McKinnon and Donnie McKinnon.
Nice.
And he said, "Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do now." And Ronnie McKinnon said, "Well, I'm going over there," pointing towards Ibrox, because they want me. And Donnie McKinnon says, "Well, I'm going over on the ferry because I'm going over to Thistle." He ended up a great Thistle centre half because they want me. And Alex said, and I just stood there saying, "God, what's to become of me?" So that was it. And there's a lovely story that sums up Alec. After I went in and the guys were saying, who you talking? I said, I was just talking to Alec. And they sat down and they said, well, he said, before a Champions League game or after a Champions League game at Rangers, Alec had come to the club just to
Pop in.
to see it. So he was fated and all that and had cups of tea, a great laugh. And the next day they got a letter from him. This is a great thing about Alec Ferguson. He's a really polite person. He's the politest man I've ever met with people. He's really, it's really weird. Because I know the other side.
Yes.
But so this beautifully written letter from Manchester with a cheque for a few £100 in it, saying, could you send me down a skip hat, a Ben Bird skip hat, Ben Bird hat, a Ben Bird mug, and maybe some for my car, and just keep the change. So they sent it all down. So Alex got this sort of state-of-the-art Manchester United German car. I don't know if it's a big black thing. It's 3 blocks long. And on the back of it is the sticker, I love Ben Burb.
Oh, yes.
So that's going through Manchester
That's
all the time.
Phenomenal.
And when he's sitting at the training ground and managers are coming in to see our players or gigs, whatever, he's drinking out of his Ben Burb mug.
What a man. Let's recap the team because usually I can remember them, but you threw some curveballs in here. Right. So your goalie's name?
Albert Camus.
You've got Billy Connolly,
Kenny Dalglish, Romeo Benetti, and Diego Armando Maradona.
And managed by Sir Alex Ferguson. That is what a team, Hugh Macdonald. What's coming up? Where can people read the On the Road series?
Always on the Daily Mail. It's on Daily Mail online as well.
Great.
So
every Saturday?
Every Monday.
Every Monday. So you do it on the Saturday and out on the Monday?
No, or the Sunday this week and out on the Monday. I was at the Glasgow City Women's game on Sunday. So
check out Hugh Macdonald. An excellent Fantasy Fives. I feel like you could talk for hours about football and I love it. That was so good. Check out Hugh's articles. If you enjoyed the episode, remember, and give it ratings and turn on push notifications for the next one. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Fives. And once again, thanks to our brilliant guest, Hugh Macdonald.